Hello, I'm Game Retainer, and in this video I'll be going over a handful of interesting locations that you can find in 7 Days to Die. I have made a few of these, so I will put a link to one at the top of the screen now. I will be showing off some locations that you'll find on the Navezgane map, and when I do I will put the coordinates at the bottom of the screen, but there are also some entries that are found on random gen worlds, so they won't have coordinates at the bottom of the screen, unfortunately. But with that said, let's jump straight in. I featured this one in a previous video, now I'm featuring its neighbour. This is the Rustbelt Garage, and it does not look like much. However, if you make your way underground, it's actually relatively big. Now, it is a tier 0 POI, so you're not going to find a whole lot of enemies down here, and you're also not going to find a lot of loot, unfortunately. However, if you want to build a base that's partially underground, then this is kind of ideal. It doesn't take long to clear the rubble from the top, so you can build a nice little base going up and have a nice little storage, crafting area, or whatever you like really, down below. Located in the wasteland on the Navezgane map, you'll find the HNN Bank Ruins, and it does not look like much at all, but it has a pretty cool feature. If you're able to use a little bit of parkour and shimmy up across these posts, there's a button that you can press. Once you activate the switch, it will actually open a door down here. Once you've made your way down, the door will open, and after a few seconds, a cop will pop out. It's a tier 0, so there's not a lot here, but there's a little bit of loot, and it's just a cool feature to have a hiding cop ready to pounce. Just like the previous entry, this location also has a hidden button that you can press. This is Shine's Jewelry, and just like the other entries so far, it is just a tier 1 POI. This POI, like the last one, requires a little bit of parkour, unless you just want to smash the door around here, but where's the fun in that? Once you've hopped over and onto this roof here, there is a panel. Break the panel and you'll end up in this little tunnel, follow the tunnel down and you'll end up in this boring room. I know. Very exciting. But if you make your way through, I mean this is a better room, but that's not why we're here. We're here for this button. Activating this switch will cause some shutters on the other side to open, revealing a little bit of loot and a zombie. Moving away from the button pushing theme but staying with parkour, we have the ironically named Stand Tower. As you can see, Stand Tower is no longer really standing. In fact, most of this building is on its side. It's a tier 4 POI, and it is basically a maze. Because everything's on its side, once you've made it into the building, you get all turned around. Or at least I did, and still do, every time I clear this one. If you make it up to the roof, then you'll be rewarded with some nice tier 4 loot. That said, getting up here is easier said than done because there are lots of breakaway floors, lots of little traps, and more than a handful of zombies knocking around in this one. Wango Barndo is a strangely named POI, and it's only a tier 1, despite it being a relatively intact building. The main reason why this one is on the video is because of this ledge up here. If you put a few blocks down on top and break away the window, this is an ideal fighting point for Horde Knights. And while there's not a lot to be found inside the building, if you do want a nice little base that's just easy to maintain, this is pretty much perfect. This is Hexagon Hideaway, and I've featured this one before, but it's moved on the Navezgane map, so I'm going to update it with the new coordinates. This tier 3 POI, although small above ground, it is actually pretty big down below. As you can see, there's a really large complex down here, which is not only fun to explore, but if you're playing with friends, it makes for a pretty good base location. The loot can be found in the central hub underground, and the building itself down here is more than capable of supporting multiple players. So, if you're playing with friends and everybody wants a bedroom, this place has got you covered. Up next we have the Dead Rooster. This is a tier 1 POI, and as you can see, it is pretty big, it's a nice shape too, and it makes for a really good base. The inside is nice and open, but the most interesting thing about this one is down the stairs. Before the apocalypse, it looks like this used to be some sort of rooster fighting arena. Unsurprisingly, you will find a handful of roosters running around, so if you are in desperate need of meat, then this is a pretty good one to visit. Also, as you can see, the loot is just downstairs, and it is tier 1, so it's nothing special, but it's very easy to grab. This next one is more of an honourable mention than anything else. This is Camp NomNom, and the reason why it's getting a mention is because it's called Camp NomNom, and that entertained me. It's a tier 0, and there really isn't a lot here. However, there is a little cave bit with some food inside. I'm assuming that's where it's got its name from. This next one is the Joelton Hotel. And I know what you're probably thinking. This looks like a difficult POI. But it's not. In fact, it's a tier 0 POI for some reason. This is basically a large blank canvas of a hotel that is pretty perfect for avid builders. There are loads of rooms where you can build different themes. It's just really, really well put together. I'm not quite sure why the Fun Pimps didn't make this an actual tiered POI, because as you can see, it is absolutely enormous. It spans over 3 main floors, and as you saw a second ago, it does have a pool out back. If you are playing with friends, then this is really, really good as a base. Also, as you can see on the roof, it's pretty nicely closed off, so if you want a little protection from zombies, then the roof is a nice place to hang out. Industrial Service Systems is a tier 0 POI, and as you can see, it's pretty well fortified. You have a fence that goes all the way around it, which is ideal for keeping the zombies out. You do also have this building here, which is nothing too special, but if you wanted to use it as a base, you could. It's not going to take you very long to clear out the interior and decorate it however you like. What makes this POI really interesting are these 2 towers here. These towers, while they don't have a lot inside them, they do have 10,000 hit points on each block. So if you remove the bottom couple of rungs of ladders, you can set up a really good fighting position and you'll be relatively safe, at least for the first few Horde nights. Flesh Feast Falls is an interesting and rather morbid little POI that you can stumble across in the wilderness. As you can see by the way it's laid out, this was presumably set up by a few survivors who were hoping to lure a few zombies to their death. If you visit this POI, there's a good chance you'll find a zombie in the little pit who is obviously stuck. There's not a lot here in terms of loot, it is just a tier 0 wilderness POI, but it's quite a creative one. So thank you very much for watching, it is greatly appreciated, and I hope you found this video useful. I am currently working on a new channel, and if you would like to check that out, I would very much appreciate it. I will play a little clip from it now. It has nothing to do with 7 Days to Die, so if this doesn't interest you, then go ahead and press the skip button, wherever that is. But here's a clip anyway. In medieval England, the groom of the stall was a highly sought after, yet disgusting role. The individual fortunate enough to get this role would be in charge of assisting the monarch with their bodily functions. Although disgusting, due to the intimate nature of the job, it often gave the worker a position of trust, and therefore put the individual in great standing with the reigning monarch. At around the same time, gong farmers provided a much needed service to those living in large towns and cities. During the night, they would head out and clear waste from cesspits. This was an incredibly hazardous and disgusting job. In fact, there was at least one recorded death of a gong farmer who fell into a cesspit and drowned in human waste. The role of an ancient embalmer was not a pretty one. Most people can agree that dealing with the deceased isn't exactly a nice task, but getting bodies ready for mummification was a very grim task. Embalmers would often use an iron hook to remove the brains of the deceased. They would also open up the body and remove all the organs with the exception of the heart. They would then dry out the body and prepare it for burial.